Hello everyone, Jack Morton, the Sega Band here. Well, today I wanted to talk about the Shining series, because I think I might as well start doing this since nobody is watching my playlists that I work so fucking hard on, which annoys me, but whatever. So instead, I'm going to be doing, timeline explaining in some videos from now on after I do each playlist. So, let's start with the easy stuff, eh? Not. Okay, anyway. So first up, we have the classic timeline. There are actually 4 timelines. It's hard to get in frame. In the Shining series. The Shining Classic series, the Shining Soul timeline, the Shining Force Neo, and Shining Reboot. We're starting with the classic timeline. Hence why I have this music queued up. Anyway. So, in the classic Shining series, you have the first game. Well, let's start by saying that the whole series takes place post-apocalypse Earth. Yeah, you can kind of figure that out by looking at some of the designs in the original Shining Force, figuring out that, yeah, these are actually like remains of Earth places, like a power plant and a nuclear reactor. And what looks like a power dynamo for the place of Dark Dragon. So, yeah, this is actually a post-apocalypse Earth. So, that's fun. Let me just say, by the way, before I start, I don't care for the Shining series, classic Shining series, at all. I think it's very unoriginal, and I don't care for it at all, but I'll save my opinions for later. So, we had the time of the Ancients, aka Earth. Then, we had the events of Shining Force 1, aka Shining Force, the legacy of great intention. After that, we had the, shortly after that anyway, basically post-credits, or during the credits maybe, we had Shining Force, Max's Diary, which is basically, and the Shining Force Another Story, which is basically a way to wrap up. It's seen in the strategy guides only, and it's borderline canon, borderline non-canon. It's confusing, but basically they kind of wrap up the events of the characters and the stories, and yeah, give us a nice little closure for everybody. After that, we had the events. 20 years later, we had the events of Shining Force CD / the Gaiden Saga. Now, this basically follows the descendants of the original cast of Shining Force, where they basically, yeah, they did shit. Max was also there in Final Conflict, which was weirdly enough not in Shining Force CD, which was weird, but whatever. Go play those games, by the way, they are really good. They're probably one of the only things in this classic timeline I appreciate. Next, about, I think it was 1,000 years after the events of Shining Force 1, we had, or was it 100 years? No, it was 1,000. We had the events of Shining Force 2. And as its name implies, they were like the Shining Force 2. After that, some time later, we had the events of Shining Wisdom. You can tell because you saw, what was his name? Max. I forgot his name. Oh right, Bowie. We had Bowie and Sarah in Shining Wisdom, so you can tell it's still like in that domain. But it was also sometime after the events of Shining Force 2. After that, a bit later, we had Shining in the Darkness, which was teased at the end of Shining Force Gaiden. Final Conflict. Shining in the Darkness was actually like the first game in the Shining series, but, let's not dwell on that. Let's see. 1,000 years after that, we get the upcoming mobile game, Shining Force, Heroes and Light in Darkness. Now, this game has basically been sitting in development hell, and who knows if it's ever going to get released, let's be frank here. It might not. It depends on whether Vespa is finally able to find a buyer, and blah 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 blah. There's a whole slew of corporate issues behind the scenes that are basically keeping this game from releasing. But from what I've seen of the trailer, it takes place in between Shining in the Darkness and Shining the Holy Ark. Help me. Alright, now an unspecified amount of time. At a very generous estimate, I'd say it's been 5,000 years bare minimum. Maybe more, depending on, a whole bunch of factors, but the bare minimum is 5,000. Shining the Holy Ark. Now, the reason I say 5,000 years-ish is because all traces of the past games are basically forgotten to time. Nobody remembers Max, nobody remembers, Bowie, nobody remembers Mars, nobody remembers, well, anyone from the previous games, and there's no recorded history anywhere, so basically, yeah, all forgotten to the sands of time. Nobody knows what the Shining Force is either, apparently. Or maybe they do, judging from Shining Force 3, but, by the way, I hate Holy Ark. I really do. It's the absolute worst game in the Shining series in general. I mean, laggy frame rate, an inconclusive story that leaves more questions than it does answers, just in general, repetition galore in the form of dungeon crawling. I hate it, okay? I'm sorry. I don't like it at all. And seriously, don't get me started on those choppy graphics. Like, this is unacceptable for a Sega Saturn game, which gave us things like Nights into Dreams and, like, Sonic Jam, other amazing games. And on there, we got this last-gen shit-looking fucking Shining Holy Ark. But anyway, enough of my rantings about that shitty game. After that, we had the events of Shining Force 3. And as its name implies, they are the Shining Force 3! Anyway. That would be Symbios, I think his name, was Prince Medion, and of course, Julian, from Shining the Holy Ark. Now, actually, Shining Force 3 was actually really good. I really liked that game. Although, only 1/3 of it is ever been officially released in the West, which is stupid, but whatever. Scenario 2 and 3 are Japan only, but at least they have fan translations. More than can be said for most of the series, frankly. Now, after the events of... Well, after all of that, Sega... There was a whole slew of bullshit that happened behind the scenes corporately. Isao Okawa betrayed Sega, we dropped out of the console wars, blah 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 blah. So, basically, what Sega did with a lot of their franchises post-console war was they basically started up a whole new slew of timelines for the different franchises, like Phantasy Star. They tried to do it with Sonic, but it didn't quite stick in the long run, as I'm sure you're aware by now. And yeah. So, basically, what we did with the Shining series was we tried to start a new timeline, but the problem was Nintendo had this weird obsession with having shitty Sega games on the GBA consoles. And I mean really bad. Like, for starters, you had like Revenge of Shinobi GBA, Altered Beast Guardians of the Realm, Crazy Taxi Catch a Ride, Ulala's Cosmic Attack, and so many more things. And it's just, a whole slew of bullshit. So, anyway, let's make this quick, shall we? The Shining Soul trilogy is comprised of Shining Soul, Shining Soul 2, and Shining Force Resurrection of the Dark Dragon, which is a GBA remake, if you could call it that. It's pretty bare bones remake at that. It sucks. I don't like it. of the original Shining Force. Let's see. I mean, how do you manage to make a kind of generic RPG and make it even worse? How do you manage that, Nintendo? Whatever. Anyway. So, we had Shining Soul first in the timeline. Then we had Shining Force, Resurrection of the Dark Dragon, and then we had Shining Soul 2. There's really not a whole lot more to say. Ooh. Next up we have Shining Force Neo. Finally onto the good part of the Shining series. Okay. So the Shining Force Neo reboot came out after the absolute failure that was the Shining Soul trilogy. They started at two different timelines, actually. Technically, the Shining reboot happened in 2002, with Shining Force Neo releasing in 2005, which was the start of a separate timeline. So basically, it's just the Shining games were like Shining Tears, blah 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 blah. Whereas we had like Shining Force games for a different timeline. Originally, we had Shining Force Neo. Hell yeah. After that, we had the equally I loved Shining Force Neo. Really, really incredible. And I think a lot of people who play it themselves, or maybe watch the timeline players, if they ever will love it too. But, anyway. Then we had Shining Force EXA, which took place an untold amount of time after Shining Force Neo. And it took place, you know, a very long time. Max and, you know, all of that have faded long into history. And an untold amount of time after that, Shining Force Feather, and an absolutely untold amount of time after that, the events of Shining Force Cross, which is an arcade game Japan only. Sorry that segment was mostly me dancing, but how could I not? Let's be real. Next, and lastly, we have the Shining Reboot Timeline. Oh boy. I absolutely love this one to death. I think there's something I really like about the Shining reboot. It's special. It's got all the anime goodness of like the Shining Force Neo timeline, but it's a lot more heartfelt and deeply emotionally charged. I mean, sure, there's a lot of waifus, husbandos all over the place, but you also got just, well, play these games, watch the timeline for yourself. I think you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. The Shining series reboot started with Shining Tears. After that, we had Shining Wind with the anime adaptation of Shining Wind following a different protagonist. Yeah, like, Shining Wind has two different protagonists. Took place... Let me just turn this down. Shining Tears X Wind, that anime, took place during the events of Shining Wind, following the cast of Shining Tears. Well, the leftover cast. After that, Shining Hearts happened. Now, Elwyn, I think, has a really weird. The character Elwyn has a very sort of weird involvement in Shining Hearts. And Shining Hearts The Bread of Happiness, which is another anime adaptation following the first half of the events of Shining Hearts. She's now changed her name to Rana, it looks like? I can't really figure out what's going on. I think there's a lot of missing material from the Shining Reboot Timeline, and no thanks to the fucking community members and fans who refused to even touch the reboot. Fuck all of you but for that, by the way. Anyway, so after all of that amazingness, you have Shining Blade. Then what looks like about a very long time after Shining Blade, you have Shining Ark. Following what looks like the descendants of Shining Tears through Blade. Then, after that, you have Shining Resonance and Shining Resonance Refrain, the PS4 remake. Oh, sorry, not remake. Well, kind of remake, I guess. After that, you had Blade Arcus from Shining Duology. Well, Blade Arcus from Shining Games. So, Blade Arcus from Shining Battle Arena, and Blade Arcus Rebellion from Shining, which were like fighting games. I'm gonna let this play for a moment. Well, anyway, I should probably mention that in the Shining Reboot Timeline, there is, it also takes place on post-apocalyptic Earth, as with all of the timelines, actually, minus the Shining Force Neo. So, in this timeline, though, Earth was called Eld, and they think it's an isekai, but actually it's time travel. Part of the tragedy of post-apocalyptic Earth, am I right? So, what they call Eld is actually Earth, and what they call End Earth is their planet. Aptly named, I know. But, yeah, play these games, I think you'll enjoy them a lot. Maybe not the classic series. But anyway, that's the Shining series timelines explained. This has been Jack Mordick, the Sega fan, signing off. Hope you have a great day. Yes, I saw the Sonic movie trailer. I have some thoughts, but, you know, I really liked it overall. I do think the costume design leaves much to be desired, or rather lack thereof. But other than that, I absolutely loved that trailer. Can't wait to see it in theaters, and yeah. This has been Jack Mordick, the Sega fan, signing off. I have a great video for you on Sunday. And I hope you all enjoy the weekend. Actually, it might be a bit sooner because it's Labor Day weekend, huh? Well, we'll see.